When the first gust of desert wind carried the rumor of a labyrinth that tested the worth of every wanderer, few believed it more than a legend. But for Sahar, who walked with tired feet across the endless dunes, the promise of that hidden maze had become her sole guiding star. Ever since she was a child, she had heard half-whispered tales of a Djinn who erected shifting corridors beneath the sands, luring pilgrims with the hope of unimaginable treasure or knowledge. They said the labyrinth read your heart's true desires and your heart's darkest fears. They also said no one who entered ever returned unchanged, if they returned at all. Sahara's father had tried to steer her from such stories. Not all wonders lead to glory, he warned. But after his passing, she had found a single clue in his old travel journal, a sun-bleached map showing an uncharted oasis deep in the southwestern desert. At that oasis, it was said, stood a great basalt archway, half buried by drifting sands. Though the place was rumored to shift with the seasons, like the labyrinth it was rumored to guard, the archway always faced the rising sun. Bolstered by her father's notes, Sahar ventured forth. For weeks she wandered beneath the scorching sky, rationing water and hope in equal measure. Each sunset she sat by the flickering flame of her tiny campfire, reading over her father's carefully drawn lines. As the days stretched into lonely nights, she often felt the labored beating of her heart. It was as if something in the desert air breathed with her, or perhaps the labyrinth itself was calling. She pressed on, even when she worried that her father's notes were only half-truths. After all, she had only a rumor to guide her, a rumor, and her own unwavering need for answers. She longed for guidance, for purpose. She told herself that if the labyrinth had claimed so many, it must hold something worth the risk. At last she reached a place where jagged stones jutted from the desert floor like petrified waves. In the distance, a monstrous black arch crouched on the horizon. Half of it lay submerged beneath a great dune, and the other half stood tall, defying the wind-blown sand. Sahar felt her breath catch at the sight. It matched the symbol in her father's notes exactly, though she could never have imagined its sheer size. Approaching it, she was struck by the eeriness of its silent watch. No footprints interrupted the smooth dunes around the structure. Even the wind seemed to die into hushed whispers. She found the entrance to the labyrinth just beyond that arch. A downward slope leading into the cool darkness underground. As soon as she stepped inside, a subtle pulse like a heartbeat radiated through the walls. She paused, holding her breath. The pulse came again, resonating in her chest. Was it her own heart, or something foreign? Groping her way along damp stone, she realized how different the subterranean air was. It was moist and carried faint currents of sweet-smelling incense. The flicker of her oil lamp cast elongated shadows on the walls, forming dancing shapes that seemed to follow her. She inched forward through a passage so narrow she had to turn sideways. After a few paces, it opened into a corridor wide enough to fit a host of soldiers abreast. Raising her lamp, she saw that the walls were etched with swirling patterns of script in a language she didn't recognize. She ran her fingertips gently across the carvings. They seemed ancient, but the labyrinth itself felt alive, as if it were shifting with each of her steps. In the quiet, she could hear faint voices. They slithered along the corridor, a repeated question that vanished when she tried to listen too closely. She moved forward, each footstep echoing in the gloom. The corridor branched in 3 directions, left, right, and straight ahead. She hesitated, recalling all the cautionary tales of lost explorers. Then the whispers grew louder, as if urging her to choose. Her heart thumped. She recognized fear creeping in, threatening to muddle her thoughts. She closed her eyes and told herself she was here for a reason. She chose the leftmost path. Almost immediately the walls began to shimmer, and the air grew thick with some intangible magic. She could hardly see more than a few steps in front of her light. Then a shape extruded from the darkness, a cloaked figure wearing a mask. Sahara's hand flew to her dagger. but the figure raised a slender hand and pulled off the mask. The face revealed was her own. She stared, heart pounding. Her reflection offered no threat. Instead, it spoke in a voice that was both hers and yet not hers. The labyrinth sees the truth of you. Will you face it, or will you flee? Then the figure's face blurred as though it were made of sand, caught in a sudden gust, and it vanished. Unnerved, Sahar pressed on. The corridor twisted and turned. She forced herself to keep track of each left or right bend, though soon the route had become an impossible maze in her mind. At last, she came to a grand chamber lit by glowing braziers. The fire flickered strangely, as if fed by an unseen wind. In the center, water trickled from a cracked fountain, forming a pool that shimmered with an inviting coolness. Around the fountain lay abandoned treasures, a few tarnished coins, scattered beads from a broken necklace, and a bent silver goblet. A sense of sorrow hung in the air, as though travelers once paused here for rest, but never resumed their journeys. Sahar knelt by the fountain's edge. She had only a few sips of water left in her flask, and the dryness in her throat was a constant reminder of the desert's cruelty. She reached out to collect water from the pool and cupped her hands. Yet, the moment she leaned in, the water's surface rippled to show her a different reflection. It was not her parched face, but a vision of her as a child, running through her father's orchard, giggling at the flutter of doves taking flight. The memory tore at her. She felt a longing ache, remembering a time when the world was bright and full of delight, before tragedy and loss. A voice drifted from across the chamber. Does the memory please you? Then stay with it and be at peace. She saw no one, but the voice was soft, beckoning. She glanced again at her reflection in the water, only to see the orchard repeated in mesmerizing detail. Perhaps one could remain here forever, lulled by comforting visions. The thought tempted her, offering a refuge from the hardships of the world. But she remembered her father's stern counsel. Never let illusions conquer your will. Summoning her resolve, she scooped the water into her flask, turned her gaze away from the reflection, and hurried on without looking back. Down another corridor, she found a series of side passages lined with shimmering veils. They reflected a faint golden light. As she passed by them, each veil began to flutter with new illusion. One showed her father, alive and well, beckoning for a warm embrace. Another displayed a lavish throne room where courtiers bowed to her, proclaiming her queen. A third offered companionship, friends and loved ones, all praising her deeds. Each vision pulled at her deeper desires: love, validation, stability. And though tinged with temptation, each was also a trap. She clenched her jaw, refusing to step behind those veils. The labyrinth was testing the purity of her heart, she realized, mocking her with the possibility of indulging illusions rather than forging ahead. At intervals, whispering voices attempted to unmoor her. They whispered of how easy it would be to give in. They promised that the labyrinth could flow around her, shape itself to her longing, if only she surrendered her quest. She thought of the desert overhead, the stark emptiness that mirrored the emptiness left by her father. Perhaps the labyrinth's illusions might fill those places. But she stiffened her spine and kept walking. She had come seeking answers, not illusions. She knew she would find no peace if she turned back. Her next step led her into a corridor that spiraled downward until she emerged into a cavernous chamber bathed in bluish light. Smooth pillars rose from the floor to a ceiling lost in darkness. The archways connecting them were etched with more indecipherable script. In the center stood a statue carved from polished black stone. It depicted a regal figure with an elongated face and cunning eyes, fingertips clasping what appeared to be a swirling lamp. Even in the statue's stillness, Sahar felt a watchfulness emanating from it. She approached. The statue's eyes began to glow like embers. Then the lips parted in a slow smile, and a voice echoed across the chamber. "You seek knowledge, power, or solace, traveler? One must know the labyrinth's price before demanding its secrets. It wasn't precisely a human voice, nor altogether inhuman. Something deep and resonant that sent tremors through the stone floor. Sahar swallowed, forcing herself to answer. I seek an audience with the Djinn who rules this place. I seek truth about my path, my purpose. If this labyrinth is a test, I desire to face it fully and see what I might learn. With a grinding of stone, the statue lifted one hand, beckoning her closer. The labyrinth is not for the faint-hearted. Every turn reflects your innermost thoughts, your unspoken dreams and dreads. Few have passed through unbroken by its illusions. Are you prepared to pay the price of self-discovery? She squared her shoulders. I have nothing left but myself. A second grinding noise filled the chamber, and the statue's lips twisted in an amused smirk. Then continue. The next corridor awaits. With that, the dais beneath the statue rippled like the surface of a pond. A new archway materialized. Beyond, she glimpsed flickering lights and heard a distant chant. Carefully, she stepped through. She emerged in a realm of shifting colors. The corridor glowed with an ethereal radiance, as if the walls were made of living, breathing gemstones. Within the varying lights, faces rippled and dissolved. One face bore her mother's tenderness. Another wore the stern glare of an old mentor, while others seemed entirely alien, glances of unknown travelers lost to time. The walls whispered in a cacophony of voices. It felt as though every life that had ever touched the labyrinth still lingered here, urging her forward, warning her back, or simply mourning their own entrapment. As Sahara pressed onward, the chanting grew louder. Soon she reached a circular chamber. In its center swirled a plume of violet smoke. It twisted with a life of its own, coiling and uncoiling in mesmerizing patterns. Within that smoke, the vague outline of a tall figure stood, arms folded, eyes blazing like captor's stars. Sahur's pulse quickened. She realized she was face to face with the Djinn of legend. Its voice came not from its mouth, but from all sides at once. Mortal, your tread upon these stones shows determination, but your heart quivers with doubt. The smoke parted, revealing more of its form. Its face was neither young nor old, with skin the color of red clay and features etched in lines of ancient power. Its gaze flicked over Sahar, as though auditing all her secrets in an instant. I have come seeking answers, she managed, her throat dry. I've heard the labyrinth tests the hearts of those bold enough to enter. If I can pass these tests, I hope to find clarity and purpose. My father once sought this place. I wish to fulfill what he could not. The Djinn's laughter resonated through the chamber, a sound like the rumble of distant thunder, a noble desire, or so it seems. Yet you must know, knowledge, power, even clarity, they come at a cost. You speak of your father. Many who stumbled here spoke of loved ones, seeking to mend some hurt or unravel some mystery. Most never escaped the labyrinth of their own hearts. Sahar straightened. I'm prepared to pay whatever is necessary. Careful with such vows, the Djinn cautioned, flicking a length of swirling smoke. The labyrinth is a mirror that magnifies both your virtues and your failings. Should you find your reflection wanting, you might wish you had fled while you could. With that, the Djinn gestured, and the chamber around them blurred. Another corridor unraveled before her, the path plunging deeper into the earth. This new corridor felt heavier. Each step sapped Sahara's strength, as if the floor dragged at her feet. The whispering voices grew more insistent, weaving stories of heartbreak and regret. She saw fleeting images, her father lying weak on his deathbed, her own face streaked with tears, the orchard in ruin. The illusions became so intense that she couldn't tell if she was awake or dreaming. She forced herself to walk on, though each image cut into her emotions like a blade. Halfway down that winding hallway, a glowing figure appeared. Her father, or an uncanny imitation. He reached for her, eyes full of a sorrow that made her heart burn. "I'm proud of you," he whispered, voice trembling. "But even the proud can be lost. Turn back. This labyrinth will consume you as it consumed me." The heartbreak in his eyes tore at her composure, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. She shut her eyes, remembering that some illusions would speak the truth while others would lie. Her father had never reached this labyrinth, never claimed it had consumed him. This was the labyrinth turning her own grief against her. Summoning all her will, she turned away. The path descended still deeper, spiraling through gloom. Eventually, she emerged into a hole lined with arched windows. Oddly enough, these windows did not show the subterranean stone, but reflected a boundless night sky, jeweled by countless stars. Stars glimmered, swirling like a cosmic dance just beyond the threshold. She hesitated, captured by their beauty. A window to the real world, or another trick? As she stared, the starry reflection shifted, coalescing into an endless desert night. She saw a lone figure herself sitting on a dune under the moonlight, head bowed. No illusions of grandeur or heartbreak, just solitude. She pressed closer to the window, unsure if she was looking at her future or a possible outcome of her choices. A voice rippled through her thoughts. "In solitude, you find the clarity to face your own shadows. Is that not what you came here for?" Then the scene dissipated, leaving only swirling stars. With a sigh, Sahara tore herself away and continued forward. Finally, she reached a set of massive doors carved with the shape of entwined serpents. They stood silently, promising a final threshold. She could almost feel her heart pounding in her ears. If this was the labyrinth's end, then what lay beyond these doors must be the Djinn's ultimate confrontation. Taking a deep breath, Sahara placed both hands on the cold stone and pushed. The doors groaned open, releasing a sudden gust of air that snuffed out her lamp. Darkness enveloped her. In that darkness, a single voice spoke. "You persevered. Very few do." A soft glow ignited, revealing the Djinn now seated on a low dais draped in fine silks. The swirling smoke around it had thinned, and its form looked more solid, regal even. Behind the Djinn, the chamber spread in circular tiers like a grand amphitheatre, each tier carved with scenes of caravans, battles and celebrations, stories of ages past. The Djinn gestured for Sahar to approach. She steeled herself. "I'm here. Show me what I must learn." The Djinn's eyes narrowed in curiosity. "Such directness in a mortal. I see in you determination, but also a trembling depth of sorrow. Are you certain you wish to gaze upon the final truth this place offers? Your illusions have been tested, your heart laid bare. But the labyrinth's last challenge is not about illusions. It is about choice." Sahara nodded. "I will accept whatever I must." With that, the Djinn raised one hand. The air shimmered, and an obsidian mirror appeared, hovering before Sahara. In its surface, she saw her reflection. But as she peered deeper, her reflection began to move on its own, wearing an expression of profound loneliness and exhaustion. "In that mirror lies your future if you choose to remain locked in your grief," the Djinn said. Then the image shifted. Her reflection straightened, forging ahead, discovering new wonders, forging bonds of friendship. "That is your future if you accept the burdens of your past and seek a path forward." The mirror's images swirled into a blur, showing quick flashes of possibility. Her reflection accomplished acts of compassion, overcame obstacles, even found a sense of wholeness. Then the mirror shifted again, revealing a scenario in which her grief curdled into bitterness, leading her to push away all who cared for her, wandering in isolation until she faded into obscurity. She winced at the sight, the sensation of heartbreak sharper than any physical wound. "The labyrinth tests every traveler's heart," the Djinn intoned. "It does not decide for you. It only offers glimpses of roads not yet taken. Your father sought knowledge and might have been drawn to illusions that fed his pride. Yet he too never faced the final mirror. You have come here to do so." A hush fell, and Sahar realized the final test was hers to claim. The labyrinth had shown her illusions of the past, temptations of comfort, regrets, achievements. Now it laid bare the possible outcomes of her choices. The question was whether she would shun those truths or embrace them. She looked to the Djinn. "I've seen enough illusions of what was taken from me, what could still be mine, and what I might become. I came to find clarity. I see now that clarity is not a neat, single answer. It is the willingness to confront fear, pain, and longing while forging ahead despite them." The Djinn's gaze glimmered, perhaps in approval. "You speak wisdom. Then the final lesson is thus: you must choose to live by that wisdom. The labyrinth's illusions cease to ensnare you once you claim ownership of both your virtues and your failings." Sahar absorbed these words. She closed her eyes, thinking of her father, the orchard, the illusions of love and riches she had spurned, the heartbreak she had borne. She recognized that part of her had clung to her sorrow as her one remaining link to her father. But in passing these corridors, she had learned that love did not vanish when sorrow eased. Instead, it could guide her, pushing her to see the world in its fullest breadth. "I understand," she murmured at last. "The labyrinth's tests have shown me that illusions hold power only if I grant them that power. I will carry my heartbreak as part of my story, but I will not let it define me." The Djinn inclined its head gravely. "Then you are prepared to leave this place. Not all who enter are so lucky. Some linger in illusions or flee in terror. You, however, find the labyrinth's final gift, yourself." Rising from the dais, the Djinn spread its arms wide. The amphitheater shimmered, and once more the corridors seemed to shift like grains of sand in a windstorm. Sahar braced herself as the ground quaked. The swirling illusions that had tormented her now faded. The weight in the air lightened. She realized the labyrinth was folding onto itself, revealing a straight path back to the surface. The cave's gloom receded, replaced by a radiant glow that shone from some unknown source, guiding her along. The Djinn watched silently, its eyes reflecting ancient knowledge. She gave a small bow of acknowledgement before turning away. She walked the corridor, her steps steadier than when she had entered. Though she felt exhaustion in her bones, it was an ache that came with triumph and realization. Each step brought her closer to warm sunlight. She climbed a gentle slope, noticing with awe that the labyrinth behind her was retracting, as if the passages themselves were dissolving back into the earth. The voices, once a constant presence, had quieted to a faint hum, their burdensome pleas finally stilled. At last, she emerged into the burning desert day. The basalt arch stood behind her, as if in silent farewell. The dunes stretched before her, golden waves rolling under a merciless blue sky. For a moment, she simply stood there, letting the sun reintroduce itself to her face. Soon she noticed something clasped in her hand, a small token shaped like a miniature lamp carved from black stone. She did not recall receiving it, but it must have appeared during her encounter with the Djinn, perhaps a marker of her passage, or a reminder that she had confronted the labyrinth and survived. Sahar gazed upon the desert with a renewed sense of purpose. She could continue her journey, carrying this token as proof that she had faced the darkest corridors of her heart. Thoughts of her father came unbidden, but no longer weighed her down with the same raw pain. Instead, they felt like seeds planted in rich soil, offering growth if she tended them. She began her trek away from the arch, forging a new path across the dunes. The desert wind pressed against her, but she welcomed it. Each footstep reminded her of the final choice she had made in the labyrinth: to live beyond illusions, to face her grief and forge courage from it. She had not discovered untold treasures or unstoppable powers, as some rumored the labyrinth could bestow. Instead, she carried something more subtle: acceptance and the understanding that the greatest tests sometimes lie within. Perhaps that was always the Djinn's trick, that seekers arrived expecting external wonders, only to find the true challenge was themselves. The sun rose higher, scorching overhead. Sahar took a drink from her flask, remembering the moment by the fountain when she had refused to let comforting illusions immobilize her. The water tasted cool, real, a testament that she still lived, still held choices in her hands. She adjusted the pack on her back and ventured onward. The labyrinth had given her no map for the future, yet, through its myriad trials, she had glimpsed a future where she could choose hope over despair, determination over surrender. She had learned that her father's passing did not sever her from him, but connected her to the life he had once led, a life of daring exploration and hungry curiosity about the world. Somewhere behind her, lost again to shifting sands, the Djinn's abode likely reconfigured itself, waiting for another traveler. Perhaps in a decade, perhaps in a century. Another soul would arrive with longing in their heart, searching for answers. They too would face illusions of their hopes and fears. They too would have to confront the labyrinth's final mirror and choose whether to remain captive or break free. Such was the labyrinth's nature, an ever-evolving puzzle that tested the essence of a traveler's spirit. And while many legends circulated about power or wealth found within its passages, the greatest treasure might remain the insight it forced into a pilgrim's own heart. With each shifting dune, Sahar felt the labyrinth's presence recede. She had faced its illusions, wrestled with her sorrow, and found a sense of release. The Djinn's trick lay in showing her that everything she sought, closure, self-worth, resilience, was never truly hidden behind illusions or locked in a chest of gold. It was within her, waiting for recognition, and so she pressed forward, leaving footprints in the sand that would soon vanish under the desert wind, but knowing that the road ahead lay open, brimming with possibility. She walked on, carrying her father's memory and her own renewed spirit into whatever wonders the blazing horizon might reveal.